husband and I, we never got a note.
It's the show that's generating tons of conversations online.
Settle in, because I'm about to tell you the story of my life. More specifically, why my life ended.
Schools across the country are issuing warnings to parents about the latest original series from Netflix, 13 Reasons Why. There's concern that the breakout teen drama could glamorize teen suicide.
Everyone is just so nice until they drive you to kill yourself. And sooner or later, the truth will come out.
We're talking with Lawrence child psychologist Dr. Wes Crenshaw about the show, and he's answering your questions on Facebook. Fox 4 News at 9 starts now.
From the station that's working for you, you're watching Fox 4 News at 9 a.m.
Hey.
Hey. Hannah, I'm not going. Not now. Not ever.
Why didn't you say this to me when I was alive? My husband and I.
You've probably heard of this. It's a new Netflix show called 13 Reasons Why. We've talked about it a lot here on Fox 4 News at 9, and it's generated a lot of conversation between teens and their parents. Okay, we want to let you parents at home know right off the bat here, this next interview is going to be talking about some serious topics, so if you want to have your little ones leave the room for a couple of minutes, that might be a good idea.
You know, some say the Netflix shows, it shines a light on suicide, signs of suicide. Others say it sensationalizes it. In fact, the Shawnee Mission School District sent a letter out to parents talking about that show. And here to talk more about this is child psychologist Dr. Wes Crenshaw. You recognize him. So let's start with the show's graphic treatment of these topics: bullying, teen sexuality, mental illness. As much as we'd like to keep our children from these types of things, you say parents should embrace these types of shows because it can be a teachable moment for them, right?
It absolutely is, and over 13 very long hours of this show, I swear there's a point every 15 minutes to stop and talk about something. You could stretch this out to about 40 hours just with the amount of conversation that is available to parents and kids and the stimulus that gives you to do that talking.
What's different in media now that has made this so much more buzzed about than, you know, other shows like it?
This thing, the computer, the iPad. Kids now consume media where in our day we sat around and watched Sunday night All in the Family or whatever together and talked about it. And now everybody watches in their own private little world. And so this causes parents to have less access to what kids are really seeing. You know, I sit around and talk to them all the time about what they're seeing. Media is a big part of the therapy discussion. And so I know, and it's a pretty diverse selection of material directly wired into them online. This show is really one of the better contents that they can have access to. But it's a very private experience now.
Well, let's talk about that. You know, what's the impact for parents when the media moves in this type of direction here?
There's a disconnect because if you don't know what your child is lying in bed watching on their phone, because long ago phones just went to bed with kids, and you don't know what they're consuming, and it's a broad range of product. And so parents aren't able to be in on that message unless they really actively choose to be. They can't be a part of that dialogue, and they need to be.
Okay, what do you say to parents who are worried about the graphic content, especially with a series like this?
Couple of things. First off, there's some very brutal scenes in this show, and they're very authentic. And I would say this is what it looks like. This is what sexual assault looks like. This is what suicide looks like. And you may want to skip those scenes with kids, but be aware that if you do, kids are seeing scenes that are not as authentic as this in horror movies, in pornographic videos online. They're seeing things that are kind of cartooned up about this. And this is authenticity, and it's more real. And I think anyone who sees these scenes is moved by them.
Dr. West, we got a minute left here. Do you have some strategies for parents on engagements of film and television here?
Well, try to emphasize safety over moralizing. You know, telling people something's wrong isn't as important as telling them why it might be dangerous. Learning over avoidance. And think about engagement, not trying to protect kids from things, but getting involved with them and having a dialogue with them about that.
And that's a conversation we've had over and over again, is we're not going to stop this as far as social media and all of those things, so how do we make it safe or safer at least?
Yeah. What's great is this is really on the surface. It gives people a chance to have an open conversation.
Well, Dr. West is going to stick around, and he is going to be answering your questions. So go to our Facebook page. We have got our Twitter page. We're going to have him answer questions coming up at 9:30, so we want to hear from you. Meanwhile, you can contact Dr. Wes Crenshaw. He is at drwes.com. dr-wes.com. Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Wes. We'll talk to you in a few minutes. Well, Netflix 13 Reasons Why is a big talker for teens and parents. So we've opened up this discussion on our Facebook page, and Dr. Wes Crenshaw has been answering your questions online, and he is back in studio with us right now.
Dr. West, what are some of the biggest questions you're getting from parents right now?
Well, there's a lot of supportive comments. There are people who've watched it, there are some people who say, well, you know, it's not that big a deal, and then others are saying it's a really good teachable moment. Not as many people as I would have expected taking exception to it.
Okay.
So let's read some of the questions that you've got here from our Facebook page here. And are you getting a common question that you've seen?
It's a lot more comments and people processing the experience, sort of talking about how they have used it to teach kids. Not so much how to do it. People are figuring out kind of the same things we were talking about, and I was making some comments back about specific scenes and how people might want to handle it. I think you really have to watch a couple of the scenes to make a good informed decision about whether you want to skip them, because the rest of the show still works, or really, you know, be in the intensity of that moment.
Kate Croft writes in and she says, 13 Reasons Why is not a bad show. I've watched it and it's not inappropriate, but I believe all teens need to watch it because they might bully others and they will learn a lesson from it.
Yeah, one of the topics worth talking about throughout the whole show is, and it's been one of the more controversial aspects of it, is whether there's a collective responsibility in cases of suicide, or whether the character Hannah, who is the decedent in this, acted of her own choice, of her own decision. And this is a question you can spend 13 hours talking about, trying to understand, and the film does a good job of presenting both sides of that and never really answering that question. Are we all responsible, or is Hannah alone responsible?
We have a person, Kelly, wrote in saying her 14-year-old son started watching this at a friend's house, and she was really concerned about the rape scene.
Yeah, and my response to her is, again, when you see this shown all over the internet, if you want to see rape scenes, they're there for the picking, and too often they are portrayed as sort of like, you know, she really wants to do it, it's just part of the sex. That's a terrible image for kids to have, and this scene shows genuinely and authentically what it is like to be assaulted, and I think it builds empathy for that character, and we need more of that in this kind of a situation.
Okay, Jamie writes in on our Facebook page. She says she doesn't have a question, she has just a comment here. She says that she works with kids who suffer with depression and have attempted. In a group last week, she then said that the show romanticizes suicide, and it's not right that characters blame others for a choice that she made. Those kiddos were ages 16 to 18.
Yeah, that's, you see, that's exactly that same theme. Is it collective guilt, or is it an individual's choice? And she also it makes a good point about the glorification question. The part of it that people have raised questions about is whether Hannah is using this to bring a measure of justice to her world, using her death this way. And that is sure not how it works. Now, I think the show deals with that. I think it argues that no, this isn't glorifying. And one of the reasons why I think the suicide itself is so brutal in the show is if you can get through that scene, and I mean if you can get through it, you will never think of this as glorious again. It is a terrible, the hurt she feels and expresses is very real. And so I think that takes away some from this idea that it's very romantic. It's pretty awful. And I think the kids are all very damaged from it. So I hear that side of it, and I understand why that debate ought to be had. It's a worthwhile discussion to have.
Absolutely. In bold letters and underlined. I'm really glad that we were able to have this discussion this morning on this, because everybody is talking about this show with their kids and parents.
Yeah, I don't know a kid who hasn't heard of it, watched it, or is starting to watch it, in the process of watching it, or wants to watch it if their parents won't let them. If you have any questions or you'd like to contact Dr. Crenshaw, you can find him on Twitter at Wes Crenshaw, PhD. You can also visit his website. It's drwes.com.
And we're going to continue this conversation on Facebook Live, so don't go anywhere. Stay on the Facebook page. Dr. Wes is going to be heading over to Studio B. He's going to join Mark Alford, and they're going to have more questions and more discussions there. So Fox4KC.com. Be sure to like our page so that you can comment.